Again, my name is Charlie Saint. I am the EPDM Consulting Services lead here at Hawk Ridge Systems. The consulting services basically takes care of all things that fall outside of support. So we do things like upgrades and migrations from one EPDM server to another EPDM server, things of that nature. And I'm also the SQL expert here at Hawk Ridge. So today I'm going to be talking about the EPDM SQL database, just so you can kind of understand what makes everything sort of work behind the scenes inside of EPDM. And specifically today we're going to be going over just rebuilding the document history. So essentially what you would see in the document history in the vault view, this is what we're going to be going over basically today, and just through all strictly SQL commands. Okay. Now, a few general notes to get started with. This webinar already kind of assumes that you have a general knowledge of writing SQL statements. I wouldn't be able to teach you very much as far as actually writing SQL statements in an hour. This kind of already assumes that you already know how to do this a little bit. There are many great resources online that you can go through to learn that. If you just put in learning SQL into Google, you'll find plenty of free resources online to teach you about everything. Really, the only thing that you need to learn about are select statements. You won't be doing any updating or inserting or deleting from the EPDM database. That's all very much not supported. It's just a terrible idea to do anything like that. Select statements is basically just a read-only operation. It's going to be going through and gathering data from what already exists. Well, most of the time we're going to be working in SQL Server Management Studio today. I'm going to show you how you basically take the queries that you build in Management Studio and turn them into a report that you can use in the report generator as well. So you don't have to, you can share this out with other users and they don't have to have a SQL Management Studio installed or anything like that. And a final note that though running select statements is generally a pretty harmless procedure, if you do run an extremely long running query, it's going to lock the tables that it's using while it's doing that, and that can therefore block users from actually using the system. So it can stop them from being able to check in files and everything like that. And these are like several minute long running queries, which are somewhat difficult to write, and usually it's just you've configured something wrong and that you have to kind of tweak it a little bit so that it runs much faster. But know that if your SQL query is running in SQL Management Studio and you're watching it, more than likely no one's able to use the vault while that's happening. And there's always a stop button inside Management Studio that you can stop the execution of a query and just kind of release it for everybody else. So just be aware that that can possibly happen. Great. Okay, we're going to dive right in here. So I got a lot to cover. And so the very first thing I want to talk about, let me actually bring up the file here for you. So I've created a very simple vault just for this testing operation. It's basically one folder. Inside here we have just this document. This document has a pretty rich history though. So if you go in here and take a look at the history of this file, you see it's got all kinds of things. It was created, it's been renamed, it's been transitioned a bunch of times. There's some version-free variable updates in here, quite a few check-ins. Even has a couple of revisions in here. We rolled it back. We moved it from one folder to another. We deleted it and recovered it from the recycling bin. So this thing has had a lot of things done to it. And all of this information can be found inside the SQL tables. And it's all relatively easy to get to. So the first thing that we're going to look at today is going to be these versions. So this kind of created, checked in. These things are versions. So you see it was version 1, and checked in version 2, checked in version 3. The next thing we're going to go over is the transition history table. So same thing applies here. So any of these transitions, all this information is stored in another table in the SQL database. So we're going to see how to get to that. The next thing we'll go over is the revision history. So whereas we have versions, which is 1, 2, 3, we also have revisions, A, B, C. So we'll go over how to actually get to that information. So it's these check marks right here, revision A, revision B. The rollback history. And that's the rollback history and many other items like it all kind of exist in the same general area. So that's going to be kind of our use case, and then the rest of them just going to fall under miscellaneous history items. And we'll kind of go into great detail about those as we get there. All right, so the first thing we want to do is take a look at this version history. All right, so versions history actually belongs in the revisions table. Okay, and that's one of the nomenclatures that kind of gets a little bit thrown off. So I think originally there was only a revisions table, And then somewhere down the line, they actually added the ability to separate versions and revisions. The only reason I can really think that they kind of named it revisions in the first place. So that's going to throw you off. And we'll see what the revisions tables are actually called here in a little bit. But so let's go ahead and jump into SQL Server Management Studio. So hopefully you've already got this installed. If not, you can use the same install media that you got with EPDM. That's the SQL disk that comes on. If you run through the install and just uncheck the server, so you don't want any of the server components, there's actually just a Management Studio Complete on the disk. You could just check that and install it on your local computer. And so from your client PC, you can connect to the server without actually having a remote into it and run SQL Server Management Studio from there. So as you see, you have quite a few things here. So most of these are a couple of vaults that I have here. I got some report server stuff going on. I have electrical installed, so I got a little bit of that too. But specifically what I want to deal with today is just this one vault database here. So if I expand it out, you can take a look and you see, if you've never been to this database before, this basically, there's quite a few tables in here. You spend all day kind of going through what all these are, but the general ones that you really need to know about: documents. This is all your file information. So if you select top 1000, you can see there's always this kind of no document row in here. And then you have everything else is actually a document. So this history document.txt is the name of my file, and this is literally the only place you're going to see that. The name is not going to show up anywhere else, basically. Information about if it's checked out to a user would be here, so it's not currently, but lock domain would be the computer that it's checked out on. Lock path would be the folder location that's checked out in. There's some more locked information in here. Lock date was when it was checked out. Lock view ID is similar. There should be a locked user ID in here that I missed. Yeah, no, just lock project. But so that's basically all your information about your files. If you need to know versions of those files, that's the table I was talking about earlier called the revisions table. So if we select top 1000 from here, you can see that this document has rev 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If I had more documents, they'd also show up in here with the document ID down the side. Now it gives you a little bit of information about when it happened, or when that version was created, the user that created it. So this user ID is 2. I happen to know that that's my admin user, but if it was any of the other users, that would show up as well. It'd just be a different number. I can show you how to extract that a little bit later. The place that it was checked in at, basically, and so the flush date, lock date, all the rest of this isn't terribly useful information. Version ID is somewhat useful, but we won't need it for this today. So basically what I want to do now is actually convert what I see here into something a little more like this. So you see we have two basic actions here. We have one that's just called created and one that's called checked in. So one of the things I want, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of this top 1000. I don't need that anymore. I'm going to leave the document ID because that's going to be important for later. The rev number, that's important because that's actually here. So that's the version. Okay. The date, that's important. So that's right here as well. The user ID, that's going to be important because that's this user. Okay, so far so good. Comment, so that's actually the check-in comment. So you see here, I have all these comments over on the side. So if I take a look, these comments are here. Oh, sorry, the comments I have are for transitions, but I don't have any comments on the checked in. So, but those are there as well. So those are the things that I want. Everything else, I can pretty much delete. So I don't want any of that information from this select statement. Okay, let's execute. All right, so this is looking a little closer. One of the things I don't have here is this kind of like event column. So what actually happened? So let's go ahead and add that, and that's actually just a static text. So just go here, and I'm literally just going to add checked in as event. Okay, execute. All right, so it says checked in. Okay, that's pretty close to what I want. So that's automatically going to say that. The problem is that right here it says created, it doesn't say checked in. All right, well, I can fix that. So this is what's called a case statement, basically. So I'm going to do a case for rev number. Oops, sorry, auto-completed. Let me just Control-C that. There we go. When one. Okay, so basically what I'm saying is that whenever rev number is 1, I want it to say created. Else say checked in. Oh, actually I don't need that. There we go. So now on rev number 1, it just says created. And everything else it says just checked in, basically. Okay. All right, that's looking pretty good. That should be pretty much all the same information that I have here. Yep, looks like it. So this is basically what we're going to be doing for pretty much everything else too. So what we want to do is build a bunch of these statements, pull all the information from all the other tables, get it in a format that is very similar to each other, and then cram it all together into one big query. One of the things I notice over here is this user ID and this date are kind of out of order, so let's fix that. So we're going to put that above. There we go. Now it's much more matched up. We're going to convert this user ID to a username later, but it ends up showing up in every table. So it's better to do it once you're all done than it is to keep doing this all the way through this thing. So that's basically how you get the version information. So again, version history, all that information is stored in the revisions table. Okay, the transition history, pretty much stored in the most basic place you could think of, in the transition history table. So that one's pretty nicely named. If we go over and take a look, it's a little more difficult to get information out of, unfortunately, because it doesn't store state information, it stores transition information. So you kind of have to tweak it a little bit to get all the information out of it. Okay, so you see here we have a transition ID. It doesn't tell us anything about where it came from or where it went. So we have these comments which end up over here. So all these comments are all in this table. The date in which this event happened, the revision number that was basically the file that went through that transition, which is important because it also shows up in here. This transition number, which is somewhat important if you want to get your sorting right, but we're going to kind of ignore that today, so we're not going to worry too much about sorting the information. And again, user ID, which was the user that actually initiated that transition. So all the same basic information again. So we don't need this. We don't need that or that. Okay. So it's all pretty close. Okay, there we go. We trimmed it down to basically pretty close to what we need. We still need this event column, so we're going to go ahead. And if we look at our transition, we're basically saying transition from, and then a state name to a state name. Okay, so we'll do the same thing again. And I don't have anything to put in there yet. There we go. Okay, and I do need. So these extra these extra single quotes that I'm putting in here, actually, 2 single quotes inside of a single quote means put a single quote there. So this one right here is 4 single quotes, basically means the string single quote. So this is what creates the single quote on the end of the state name. To get the state name, though, we have to add a couple of things to this. So I'm going to go up here. So if I change this at the top here, for anyone that doesn't know, basically means I don't have to put this whole information in the beginning of these. So it still knows where to get that transition history table from. It pulls it from this database that's at the top. So it just makes it a little easier for me to write. So I've named this transition history table, given it an alias, basically. So it just kind of makes it easier for me whenever I don't have to type it over and over again. So I'm going to interjoin this on the transitions table. And by the way, all these SQL queries are going to be available as part of the webinar later. So if you pull it up on our website, you should be able to pull these queries along with everything. So if you need to access this later. All right, so I'm going to call the transitions table T, and I'm going to join th.transition, oh, sorry, on th.transition ID, transition ID. Okay, so that basically means join these two tables together, where the transition ID from transition history is the same as it is in the transition table. Match those things up and add the rest of the columns on. So this basically is going to get me, it's going to convert the transition ID into a transition name, basically. I see a typo up here, so let me fix that little thinking. Okay, so from that, though, I still need a little bit more information because I need to know what the state names are. So I'm going to do another inner join, and this is a table called status. Okay, so, and we're going to call this one S1. I'm going to show you why. So we're going to do the transition dot source equals S1.status ID, and I'm going to inner join again on status. S2 on t.destination, oh, sorry, destination equals S2.status ID. There we go. Okay, so this allows us to get the state name of the source, and that's going to be stored in S1, and the state name of the destination, that's going to be stored in S2. So we go up here, we're going to say S1.name, because that's the source, and here S2.name, and that's the destination. Okay, so if I execute this, transition from under editing to waiting for approval to approved. This all looks pretty good. Under editing, waiting for approval, waiting approval to approved. It's great. Okay, so it looks exactly like what we're looking for. You do notice there's a null here at the beginning. So basically, we're going to do another case statement. Okay, so case, and this one's going to be on transition number. Yep, forgetting to do that. There we go. Okay, when one, then else. Okay. And I copy and paste this. And this one says initial transition to, and then the state name. Okay, and then we only care about the destination this time because the source one is actually what was giving us that null. So if I execute again, initial transition to under editing, all the rest of them say transition from editing to waiting to approval, etc. Again, we have this user ID kind of out of order, so let's go ahead and move him. And let's take this top 1000 out, delete that, execute. Great. Okay, that's looking good so far. So we got comments, dates, users, rev numbers, events. Everything's looking pretty much the same. Okay, so that's the transition history information. The next thing we're going to run across, actually, let me take a look and see. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them, and I will try to take a look at them as I go through here. So looks like, yeah, so far no questions, but yeah, I'll come and take a look again a little bit later to see if anybody has any questions. Okay, the next thing that we want to look at is the revision history. The revision history is a little bit difficult to find because the table name happens to be user revs. This one is kind of took a long time for us to figure out, but that is where all the information is stored. No idea why that name was chosen as the table for this, but we're stuck with it now. So if you go and look underneath right here, so if we just select top 1000, yeah, so this is basically, this is a rev ID. You'll see it skipped one. That was because of the rollback that I did. But there's the document ID that belongs to our file, the revision in which this happened. And you'll see two fields here. One's called the comment, and that's actually the revision number that was stuck on it. And this user comment would be, if there was anything over here, it would show up there. And I can actually show you that. So if I hit, say, comment A, and update, close. If I run this query again, there's my comment. So all that information gets put in the database. So it's good to know that that's all there. So again, all the information that we need is pretty much here. So we don't actually need this user rev ID, so we'll delete it. We're starting with document ID. So let's go ahead and create our event ID again. And that's going to say, I believe it just says revision. Yep, revision and then the comment, whatever it's going to be. Okay, so let's go back here. SIN colon. And then we just want to add the comment. Okay. Yep, so revision A, revision B. We don't actually need this comment field, but we do want that one. We just don't want it called user comment, so we're just going to rename it comment. There we go. And again, user ID, we're going to move this back to where it belongs, which is right after rev number. Document ID, as event. So you see this no column name here, so I know to rename that. There we go. All right. So we have our event, revision, user, date, comment. Do we miss anything? Oh. Feels like version, user, date, comment. Okay, that's everything. Perfect. Okay, so that one's really easy. Nothing really fancy for that one. Just as long as you know that where the information is found. Again, user revs table. So, okay. The next one's a little bit tricky, and that's going to actually be the rollback history. So there's actually a whole set of tables that start with the name history. And you can find a great deal of information in here, but not all of it is actually document history. So if we scroll up here, we see, yeah, quite a few of these things have these histories in them. And what those mostly pertain to, so if I go here, then I go, say, right-click on this guy, this groups, and I click on history. That information is stored here in this history groups table. So I haven't actually done anything with this because it's basically an empty vault. But if I had added some groups or changed some groups or anything like that, you'd get a bunch of rows in here, and that would show up in there as well. So this is not just document information. This is actually quite a bit of other information as well. So the ones that we're going to be looking at in this whole thing is basically let's take a look here, history delete we're going to be looking at, history move, history rename, history rollback, and seems like history version free variable change is going to be another one. So we're going to be dealing with a bunch of those, but let's take a look at history rollback first, since that's kind of our use case. So take a look again, just kind of delete this information. And we got some pretty simple information here, not a whole lot to work with. There's no comments for rollback, so that's not in here. You get the user ID still, but it doesn't actually have specifically the rev number that happened on, which doesn't show in the, so you wouldn't have a version number here in this actual event or anything. But it does tell you what versions were removed. So this one's a little bit interesting to get the event out of. So simplest event would just be to say rolled back, yes, rolled back, and then parentheses version. There's a single, yeah, there we go. Rolled back, parentheses version, something removed. and that's going to be the from. Okay, so this is a good thing to notice. Conversion failed when converting the varchar value rollback version to a data type int. So what it's trying to do is from is a number, it's not a string. So what we have here is a string plus a number is going to fail. So just tell it to convert it. I always do in varchar, and we'll say 50 is a good number, because that means it'd be 50 digits, basically, would it be allowed to convert. So I doubt that we're going to be running into any 50-digit numbers, so that should be fine. There we go. Okay, so I converted it to a string, and I've slapped it in between a couple of other strings, and now it's perfectly fine. Okay, so that covers one of mine, but you see this version 8 removed when it actually should say version 6 to 8 removed. So let's go ahead and just kind of update that a little bit. Got another typo there. Okay, so again, let's do our case statement. And this one's going to be on kind of a tricky one here. We're going to do from minus 2. Perfect. So these are integers, so you can actually do math on them. So it's going to take this from, it's going to subtract 2 from it, and then I'm going to say when 1 say this. Else, oops, sorry, I need a then here. And similar. So that's going to say versions something to something removed. Okay. Autocomplete's going to drive me crazy today. And let's see. End. Conversion failed. Oh, I need my same convert statement on the 2, so let's throw that in there. There we go. Okay, 8 to 5 removed. Not quite what we're looking for. Okay, so we had version 6 to 8, so I get those backwards first. So let's swap these. Okay, and we'll notice that this 5 should actually be a 6. Yep, version 6 to 8 removed, so that makes sense. So we need to do a 2 plus 1. There you go. Just add 1 to 2, then convert it to a string. Bam. Version 6 to 8 removed. Perfect. All right. That's exactly what we're looking for. Okay. So far so good. We do have a time down here, so that shouldn't actually be time. You'll notice that a lot of the history tables say time instead of date, so we're just going to stay consistent. We're going to say as date. Yeah. Doesn't do anything different, just calls it date instead of time. We don't need from and to because that information is actually in the event. And we are missing a few things here. So currently we don't have a rev number, so we're just going to go ahead and add one. There we go. Okay, and that's just an empty string basically, so don't put anything there, just make it a column so that it exists. And we need another one as comment. Okay, perfect. These are important, so whenever you're unioning things together, which is what we're going to be doing here in a little bit, you have to have the same number of columns or it won't actually join them together. So you have to be sure to put these in there, and you have to put them in the right place, otherwise things kind of get mixed around. Okay, And we're great. All right, that's perfect. That's exactly what we want for this one. So moving right along. Okay, let's see. Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any questions yet, so we'll just keep on moving, and we're going to go into just the general miscellaneous history tables. Okay. Okay, so for information like renamed, this is a good one to take a look at first. All that information is basically here as well. So just go to history rename. Oh, sorry, I hit the edit tables. Let's close that, and we're going to select same basic information. And so you have the old name here. That's basically what it says, renamed from old name. So that's a simple one. And we need a single quote in there. Renamed from, there you go, perfect. So see, you also get folder information in here too. You know it's a folder because the document ID is 0. So anytime you see document ID 0, that was an event of a folder. Okay. We don't need old name. Same basic thing here. There's no revisions that are associated with this, so we have to put one in there. Date. Comment. There we go. Okay, so the same basic setup here. Okay. All right, and that's how you do it for that. There's a few more in here. Kind of going to be running out of time if I keep doing all of these. So same thing. History move. You do the same general thing to it. The other one, this one down here, the history version free variable change. Okay, so that's here. You'll see that if you update a version free variable, if you guys have moved to 2013 at least, then it doesn't create a new version, but it does put an event in the history so you can at least see it. And you could also roll back through these events so that you can undo changes to version free variables that way. History deleted, that's an important one too. The thing about history deleted, and I'll actually go ahead and do this one. This one's a little bit different, as these action IDs show up here. So still a case statement. So case action. And anytime these words turn blue, you generally want to make sure to put them in here. Blue means that it's a reserved SQL word. And in square brackets means you're talking about a column, so it just keeps it from getting confused. It probably would have worked, but I generally like to do that anyway. So action when 1, then that is deleted in, and then folder name. And actually to get that information. So we see we have a project ID, so it's a good thing that I went through this. To get the project ID into a folder name, specifically a folder path is what we want here. You would join this to a table called projects. Okay. And so you see it's not auto-completing, it's because I forgot to tell it up here. So I'll just change this. That's fine. P on P project ID equals, we'll call this HD. There we go. Okay, so that'll join on that. And we want p.path. And add another single quote to the end. Execute. Okay, what do we get? Oh, we'd still have a few more things to write. So when 2. There we go. Perfect. So you'll notice that this is kind of one of the things that you're going to fall a little bit short on. The history dialog itself actually uses a little bit of programming to figure out where this vault root is. So this is different on every computer. You have a choice. You can either leave it as it is, where it would just say that /test folder /, which is what we get here, or you could just manually put in a value. So if you wanted it to say this C SQL backbone, you could type it in there. But there's nothing in the database that's actually going to give you that information. So just go ahead and type it in here. SQL /. But it's more of an aesthetic thing than anything. So there you go. And so that will throw that information in there as well. Okay, so same thing, date is time, there's date, sorry. And blank as comment. Okay, and I've got a incorrect syntax near. I put something in here I shouldn't have. Oh. That's why I missed that. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so you got our blank rev number, our comment, everything. All right, and so basically you do that for all of these tables. And so basically out of the slides. So the next thing that you want to do is actually start aggregating this information together. So this is going to be what it would be the union operation. So let's go back to this. Don't worry about that guy yet. Close that. Here's a good one. Okay, so we want to slam these two tables together. So if I take that and I bring it back over here, and I just give it a union all. And the all is not necessarily necessary here, but I just like to put it in there anyway, just as a catch-all. The difference being a union would leave out duplicate rows, which should never happen in a history dialog, but the union all will include duplicate rows, which is something that you gotta want. So, okay, so it's going to take these rows, and it's going to union them with these rows. So must have an equal number. Oh, it looks like I missed something, so I have a document. And so this is what happens if you get the number of columns wrong. We have a rev number, user ID, a date. Oh, I have an action up here. Interesting. There we go. Okay, so now I matched up the number of columns. I had an extra one at the top. So deleting that makes them actually mesh together. So same thing, you get the documents, and you get the deleted, recovered, and also the renamed. So all this stuff, information came together. So let's close that. Don't need it. Okay, same thing here. Let's go ahead and take this guy, copy. There we go. All right, a little bit more information. Now we got the rollback information in here as well. Okay, close him. Let's do. Okay, here's some of our revision information. Let's take this. There we go. All right, there's our revision information too. Transition history. So let's take that. There we go. There's our transitions in here. Okay. Versions. So here's our created and checked in and all that. Okay. And no, we don't need that. Okay, perfect. So we have all this information. We want to sort it, basically. So the best thing to do, usually when you want to sort it, if you want to get it in the right order, is to sort by date. So to do that, we need to kind of create an outside select. because we can't sort each of these. So we just have to select star from, just put parentheses around this and put one at the end. And just say order by. Date. Oh, I need to name it. Sorry. A. There we go. Order by date. Descending. There we go. So this looks a lot like what we have over here. There's still a couple of things missing because I didn't quite implement everything that was in there. But you have your created, it was renamed, it was transitioned, all the same. Checked in, transition, checked in, revision, checked in. I didn't have the version free variables included there, but those will be in just a little bit. Okay, so you could do all that through. And so basically that's it. Just if you need to add another table, you just union it in. So as you find things, you can kind of just throw them in there as well. So the nice way to do this too is if you don't want to have this huge thing, is to use what's called the with clause. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. Oop, let's go back over here. So if I open this guy, so these are the files that will be included with this this webinar. So it shows, so I'm using my SQL backbone database, and I use this with clause with HM as, and then there's the whole history move select statement that I did a little bit earlier. HVV is this one. So that pulls from the history inversion variable changed. The HD, so this is the history deleted one. So I have all these, so you just put a comma at the end of them, another one as whatever. You create all these queries and you just put them at the top, and this column comes before the actual select statement. Okay, and then that's the end of it right there. So that's the last of the with clause, basically. After that, I'm just telling it, these are what I want to select out of there from the exact same thing. Select star from, so that's all my unions. I've just basically created these aliases and defined them above. Makes it a lot neater if you're coming back later to kind of modify this or anything like that. I think it's a lot cleaner. It doesn't run any faster or anything like that, really, but it definitely makes it a lot easier to understand. And what I've done down here is that after I've slammed all of that together, I also join it on the users table, so that will convert that user ID into a username. So I can actually get admin out of it instead of 2. Interjoin documents, that's going to give me my file name, so I'm just throwing that in there. Same thing, order by date descending, if I execute. Oops, sorry, can't have anything highlighted when you click execute. There you go. And there's everything. So this is exactly the same as this. So I've actually implemented everything in this one. So there's my version free variables and all that. So if you did a line-by-line comparison, it'd be the same. One thing to note, if you have transition actions that set variables, things like that, you're never going to be able to get those exactly right, the same as the sorting method that EPDM uses, because what happens is basically you have 3 or 4 events that all happen at exactly the same time. And it's got some weird stuff that does in the background to say, this one should have happened first and this one should have happened next. But if you're sorting by date only, then those 3 things is going to kind of slam in there at random, so you don't know which one of them is actually going to show up before what. So you maybe it says you did a transition, then you set the revision, and then you set the variable, which would be shown as a check-in operation. So that might be what your SQL statement says, and then the actual history dialog might put them a little bit out of order. It's not terribly important though, so don't take that too harshly if that does show up for you. Okay. So, and that's basically it. Once you've got that, now the fun thing comes, and you can actually convert this thing into a report that you can run from the SQL or the EPDM report generator. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done that. Get back over here. Let's go over here, go to my report generator, and I've actually already included it. So if you run this guy, it doesn't do anything yet. It's actually requires you to dump a file in here. So let's see if I can do this without, yeah, it's a little easier with 2 monitors. Okay, there we go. Boom. Okay, so I've drugged this file into the selected files. If I click this guy again and run, there we go. So this gives me all my history. Okay, and basically to create that, you would take this entire query and you copy it out, and you're going to go to just your C, you can go to your program files, SolidWorks Enterprise EPDM, and if you look for report examples, you can open this guy with Notepad. Okay, and I'm going to take, you can take any one of these. There's quite a few reports in here, so if you guys have never actually played with the report generator, this gives you about 8 reports, I think, that you can kind of see what the SQL syntax is for them. So it's an easy way to learn a little bit about the database in the back end. I'm just going to take one of these, delete the rest. So the little asterisk lines here kind of mark the end of a report. So just highlight all of this and keep going. There we go. Delete it out. I'm going to do a save as. Okay. Let's call it report example. Okay, and I'm going to paste my SQL over the top of it. Perfect. All right, so this would run, except for it would still run for everything in the vault. It doesn't care about what I've actually drug into that selected files section. So to do that, I just happen to know, and you could actually look, if you pull up the report generator, you go back to it. In here, if you hit help, go to contents, this will give you a lot of information about their actual report generator interface. And in here, let's see. Yeah, here's how to. So in here, it'll tell you basically how to go in and actually set these things up. I've done this enough to know that basically I just need to add file ID and name it. The file ID is just what I call it. And I need an M there and nothing on that. Okay, so that's just the syntax. You can find that in the help file. And just down here at the bottom, going to add a where d.document ID equals the file ID. Perfect. And let's go ahead and add it in. Okay, so once you've done that, you can just click import and put mine in, let's see, program files, SolidWorks Enterprise EPDM, for example. Okay, I didn't name it or anything like that, so it stuck with the name that it was already at, which is this all currently defined workflows. I already had one called history of all documents anyway, so click that. I still need to bring my file in here, so let's do that. There we go. And run it again. Oh, okay, so this is what's going to happen here. Report generator is a read-only tool, so it's basically looking for any illegal words in SQL. And those illegal words are insert, delete, and update. It doesn't really care if those are actually part of any of the commands, though. If it finds those words, it's going to throw a fit. And it happened to find those words in my SQL report. Okay, so let's go take a look at that again. I don't think, yes, I did leave it up. Perfect. All right, so where that actually shows up is in one of these comments. There's like one of these strings, basically. So if I go scrolling through here, should see update. And just Control F. There So I can't say update in here. Even though it's in a string, it's not actually running anything, nothing like that. It's still going to throw a fit. So just kind of the way to get around that is to just put a single quote plus single quote. Okay, so I mean, this is still update. It's going to run right together, but this note, it breaks it up enough so that it'll actually run it. So it's just kind of a workaround for that, since they don't want you actually modifying the database with the report generator. Okay, so once I've done that, just remove this guy, click OK, open, same again. Okay, that's good. Click and run. There we go. So now you get basically the same thing, just this nice little report file or report output. And anybody can run this, so you can share this out with anybody in the organization, and they can run the exact same thing from report generator anywhere that they are. So, all right. That's pretty much everything that I had for you guys. Thanks for attending. I'll take a look and see if anybody has any questions. Feel free to leave if you don't, and I'll try to answer any questions that show up. Yeah, Curtis points out that the root can actually be found in the revisions table, and that's true, but it may not be the same for each user. So take a look at that. So you see that you do get this root in here. So that was the root of where the revision was created from. It may not necessarily be the root of where the person actually is viewing it from. So if someone creates it and they create it from their C SQL backbone, and so another user is viewing it from D SQL backbone, the program would actually fix that for you in the history dialog. It would say D here instead of C. But yeah, you can pull it from the revisions table as well. So. The SQL file should be uploaded basically with the webinar. So if you go to our webinar site, it should have that information. I think, let me check to see. Yeah, my slide doesn't have it. It's on the website. If you just go basically to the webinars Wednesday section, you'll find this recording a little bit later. So it takes us a couple of days to get it all processed and put up on the website. But there with it, it should have the files to download. Okay, that looks like about it for the questions. So if any of you have anything, if you wanted to let me know or anything like that, there's my email address. So it's charlies@hawkridgesys.com. Again, thanks for attending, and hope to see you next time.